the two by-elections that took place this weekend, Ugenya and Embakasi South. It was a double defeat for ODM. David Ochieng from the MDG party beat ODM's Chris Karan. That was in Ugenya. And then in Embakasi South, Irshad Sumra was beaten by Wiper's Julius Mawade. Now, the newspapers are leading with this, and this has hit the headlines since the weekend. Anthony, your reaction to that double defeat, tell us.
Well, it was a very bad weekend. I mean, by all accounts, it depends on where you're standing from. There are people who have said, you know, this is the beginning of the end of ODM, the Raila's grip over Nyanza. There's a new wind of change, and, you know, next election, kitaeleweka, you know, all manner of statements. I have seen the DP trying to own the two wins, saying that, you know, Mungu ni wa ajabu, and I think he's trying to throw jibes at the Prime Minister. I think there's no giving excuses. Once a Prime Minister, always a Prime Minister.
Okay.
If you're a president, I've never heard them say former President Clinton. They say President Clinton, President Kibaki. That's the way it always is. I think it's civil. It's always part of the civility. So he is Prime Minister, and now, of course, he has other credentials. I think there's no way for ODM to run away from this. We can say all manner of things. ODM was not on the ballot. It is not Raila on the ballot, and that Ruto put in this, he did that. We can say all manner of things. At the end of the day, it's a defeat we must own. I think that's where we need to begin with. And having owned that we failed, then we need to start looking what really happened. Right. And my view is that there were different dynamics. What happened in Ugenya had its own issues, and what happened in Embakasi has its own issues. Let me start with Embakasi, for example. To begin with, these are people who tied almost. They had like 200, 300 votes in between them. So you can tell that the contestation was never going to be easy. Right. A little bit of a gap now. I think Mawade won with what? A gap of 3,000 or 4,000, I assume. Yeah. First of all is the demographics. Jubilee decided they were not going to put in a candidate there. So the demographics there were such that the Wiper block of people, if you so wish, the Kamba community, who are greater demographically, started from a strong position. Then, of course, you had the Kikuyu vote, which then became the swing vote. But one side of the Jubilee, even though Jubilee said they wouldn't put in a candidate, you saw one side of the Jubilee wing throwing their weight behind Mawade. Right. To what extent they swayed the Jubilee vote, bedrock down there, is a matter to be debated, but it can be assumed that that block swung to the Wiper side. So those are the demographics that I would say worked down there. And then, of course, there was the issue about the internal issues in ODM. Right. And I think it's good that we admit it. I think the candidate coming from a by-election and after the 2017 election perhaps did not do enough to try and gel with, one, the loss. Two, there were issues about how the nominations were conducted. Right. There were MCA issues there. There were issues between how the different voting blocks there were relating to this particular person. And we tried, the party tried to call and whip these people. As members of parliament, I know we tried to whip these people, but the complaints, I think, at the end of the day, cost us the elections. Okay. So we can say all manner of excuses about whether or not Tanga went there or money was, but I think it's more internal about the demographics and the internal issues in ODM, and that's what cost us. There are people, of course, who've also said that the presence of the party leader, right, Raila, could have, that presence from the very beginning could have given a strong message, because, you know, Raila commands support beyond the demographics. Right. And a statement from the very beginning that, you know, this is our candidate, we are doing this would have helped. But I understand where he was coming from, because we have this NASA arrangement, which is neither here nor there. It was supposed to still persist after the elections, but you remember after the handshake there were all these manner of split, and one of the partners said it's going to be messy, and there was that divorce issue, and there was the handshake issue, were we not, or were we not? And there was a swearing-in issue.
Yeah.
There are lots of things in between, and there's never been any attempt to bond these things back.
Okay.
So in one way, the voters there, at least the wiper side of the bloc, could have been sending a strong statement of protestations about certain events and arrangements within the coalition itself. So that also played, and if the party leader was trying not to put too much pressure on an already fragile coalition, the unintended consequence is that the ODM candidate did not get that signal which could have got from the very beginning. Okay. So if I was to come to Ugenya, Ugenya, the issue was different. I think...
Before, let me interrupt you. Before we go to Ugenya, let me get Gabriel's contribution on Embakasi South, and then we'll move on. Some interesting points there by Anthony. No denying that internal issues within ODM were a contributing factor. What was your response to the outcome of this by-election?
And by the way, one thing that Honorable Anthony has said is something that is becoming of age, or is coming of age, and that is internal party, democracy. I think if there's anything that has been highlighted very well, it has to do with that, how parties, and it's not only ODM. You remember back in Kajiado, Jubilee suffered the very same fate during, the time when the late Ngaiseri was given a CS. And you had these two gentlemen where TNA conducted party nominations, and the voters did not feel as if the person who got that ticket actually was the one who was supposed to get that ticket. And what did that other person do? Memusi went to ODM and he clinched actually, a seat which, many people thought would have gone to him either way while he was in Jubilee. So there's something that comes out about party mechanisms, and I'm glad that the electorate are starting to understand. What they are saying really is, it does not matter, even if you come with a very strong party, if your politics are those of irrelevance, then we are going to actually make sure that you don't get that seat. And really, to me, that's what comes out mainly, not only in Ugenya, but also on this other seat. The other thing was the bad politics which was being played. Political dynamics and, the voter dynamics notwithstanding, I think the message also did not really, become attractive to the people. If you look at somebody like David Ochieng, I mean, that guy has actually done so well.
Are we already on Ugenya?
No, I'm just talking. Mawathe also is somebody who was very in touch with the people. Sumra, I think his way of doing politics is what I call the yesteryear politics, where for you to rise, you must bring others down. And if you had the two testaments that Mawathe was preaching and what Sumra was talking about, they are worlds apart. And so for the Mwananchi, like, what, we've just come out of an election. Do we really need this kind of language? And I think to so many people that have been able to talk to in Embakasi South, that is something that really may have misrepresented Sumra. And probably, to an extent, I agree with Honorable Anthony when he says the issues about internal party structures really played a very big role in it.
Okay. All right, let's move on now to Ugenya. What transpired there, in your opinion?
The problems in Ugenya were much more deep-seated, I think, in terms of messaging, number one. I think we may have missed what really the people wanted in terms of messaging. Yeah? We focused too much on national politics, and I think at that time, the people down there seems to have been saying, tell us things about that touch on us. We talked about the fight against corruption. Of course, there was, you cannot miss an opportunity to bring in corruption and talk about Handshake and anti-Ruto vibes. I mean, the formation and the kind of politics that's been going on around, it was almost inevitable that there was too much dose of characterizing. At some point, I think there was a characterization like a vote for David Ochieng would be a vote for Ruto, and I suppose that's why the tweet from Ruto. I've listened to other people and other members of parliament. They're actually saying the deputy president may not even have contributed. But because we packaged our message that a vote for David Ochieng is a vote for Ruto, therefore they're saying the people of Ugenya voted for Ruto. It's not really true, but that's how we may have missed out on how we could have packaged our Nini. So it was about the issue and how we framed them. The second issue, and I think which is more important, is that the people of Ugenya were probably more interested in terms of the development record. What are the solid development issues that you're bringing to the table? And unfortunately, I think we didn't have much of that. We have too much of political rhetoric, too much of ring fencing, our politics at the national level by saying, you know, a vote for this person will help us to fight this at the national level, with very little in terms of this is the developmental issues that this candidature is bringing. It did not help that David Ochieng has a very solid development record on the ground. Over the years, when he was a member of parliament, he put in a TTI, he put in a TTC, he put in a medical, whatever, and he has a structure for how he deals with the teaching fraternity, and the agricultural sector has been thriving. He offered free fertilizer, free plowing. We didn't have a narrative to counter that. And he didn't have to do too many political rallies. I think he organized himself in terms of groupings and door-to-door campaign and sending his development message. So that was our undoing. And that's the second issue I would say about our undoing. I'll say this again in terms of the overarching role that our presidential candidate, the Prime Minister, brings in. I think the lesson there is that outside of Raila Odinga, ODM needs to think how strong can we stand. If Raila Odinga wasn't there, what would happen to ODM? I think that's a question we need to ponder as ODM, because if in a by-election like this, if Raila had decided that I want to go out there and campaign for this thing, I am quite sure that the result would have been different. Right. So the issue we need to ponder is, can we build a structure and a party machine that complements the stature and the input of the party leader? Minus the party leader, it appears to me that ODM would still struggle. I think that's the second message, the third message that would come. The last thing that I wanted to say on this is that there was a lot of undertones and which actually ended up antagonizing too much, more than we thought. There's the 2022 gubernatorial debate in Siaya County. And it is perceived, this is not my view, I've read it on social media and we've been discussing it freely in forums, that the Ugenya by-election was perceived as a dress rehearsal for who's going to be governor. Right. And apparently in the same camp there were two opposing, one supporting Senator Orengo, another one apparently revolving around Wandai. I've not heard them both come out very openly that they want the seat, but the undertones are that this was so strong that people thought anybody who takes credit out of this appears to have a leg ahead of the 2022 race. So you never know. There might have been some undercutting that if he's going to get one leg, I might as well just pull, I'll hold his tail from behind, from the same camp. So these kind of things may have helped to antagonize the various parties. And I think also, lastly, I think speaking to some of the ODM technical people who are on the ground, was that there were also internal issues about a disconnect between the candidate's camp and his machinery and the machinery that came from the headquarters, and they couldn't quite gel.
Okay, well, go ahead.
And I agree to another, I mean, to quite a high extent. You see, the topics that were supposed to be discussed, instead of localizing the politics like a place in Ugenya, it went national, and I think that really beat them down. And then it is actually not Deputy William Ruto who actually brought himself into those campaigns. They are the ones who took him there, saying that if you vote for this candidate, then you're voting for this person. I mean, you're taking this election, which is a member of parliament seat, you're taking it national, you know. There is a message that lacked substance, and I agree with Honorable when he says, you know, it did not marinate with the people down there, notwithstanding what somebody like, you know, David Ochieng has done quite a lot. But then again, you want to force people to think in a certain way. And, you know, like somebody said, we are now getting into a situation where people now can, at the very least, think. And this is somebody in Mashinani who's saying, what will, you know, you're talking about William Ruto here. what will he come and do for me? I want you to tell me what you're going to do for me. And I believe that is the message that did not augur well. When they are saying the deputy president is taking credit, you know, at this point, if I was a politician, I would take it. You know why? Because I didn't start it. You brought me into it, and it has worked to my favor. So I believe probably that's why he's saying, you know what, this worked. And by the way, be very careful next time when you're talking about personalities, instead of talking about something which is issue-based and something with substance. Right. You know, I also remember that's how the seat in Mathare went, where Mheshimiwa sits. The people who are there before him really personalized it. It became an issue of, you know what, he is like this, he does, and that's how they lost the seat. Right. Jubilee lost the seat because they did not cater the issues that the Mwananchi Mashinani wanted to hear. And that's why this gentleman is sitting here, because he talked about issues that he believed, you know, this is what people want to hear, this is what I can do for them. The other place, like Kibra, Ken Okoth, amazing guy, that's how he won, you know. It didn't matter who would have come there, because his message, you know, was auguring very well with the people Mashinani, and what he had done, his track record was actually speaking for himself. So I'm liking, there's one element of where we are heading that I'm liking. Mwananchi is starting to realize, hang on a minute, what have you done for me lately? And you know, if that is the politics that we are going to preach, in fact, it will not only be good to our country, but it will also hold leaders accountable.
Right, so it seems like in some areas, Mwananchi are getting it right, but the politicians are not. There is still so much more to discuss on this issue, but we've got to take a quick break. We've gone past the top of the hour. Do stay with us. This conversation continues when we return. That is Anthony Oluoch, the MP for Mathare, and also Gabriel Muthuma, a political analyst. We were speaking about the Ugenya and Embakasi South by-election, and we'll continue that now. Now, before we took the breather, Anthony, you had raised issues as to what perhaps the reasons were for the double loss for ODM. But my question really is, by now, shouldn't ODM know the tricks? Shouldn't they have learned lessons from previous times? You know, are these reasons really valid and justified?
Of course, they're justified, and I say this is really my opinion. Everybody has their own valid opinion. Over the break, I was trying to go through one of the ODM blogs, and you will not believe it, all manner of things being thrown, banter here, people blaming each other. I've seen posts, people saying some people should resign. There are blames going over all directions. One of the things I think that I need to say here, and I'm not in neck, is that we have carried out, I think, an audit of what went wrong, what went right. Some of what is going on wrong now are captured and perhaps will be solved in a report that we gave to an independent group of people, I think led by Catherine Muma, a lawyer and somebody who's been in public in it for a while. They address issues to do with how we handle our nominations, the composition and how we manage our National Elections Board, the issues about nominations itself in terms of the people we nominate on the party lists. There are all manner of recommendations, including how we handle our coalitions, because really in Nairobi, the other thing I can tell you is that we lost to Jubilee because of the sibling rivalry between the constituents party in NASA. Places where we could have got a seat, we easily lost 3 or so seats because of that. So there's a whole array of recommendations in which I hope, once they are officially tabled, the party will be able to once and for all be able to solve this. There are perceptions and people who say that that when we carry out our nominations, this spills over to subsequent elections that come. If you have an election subsequent, or you have a by-election that comes, people vent their frustrations or pay back during that subsequent election. So that's something we need to know, that we need to plan not for a particular election, but to plan to make the party stable, stick to the ideals of the party, keep closer to the people. We are the social democracy, democratic-leaning party. So things that resonate with the people, we can carry out a lot of rhetoric and high-octane politics which are associated with the platform we have. That's understandable. But the ordinary things that affect people is what ODM is all about justice and about equity. And equity and justice starts with how you manage things.
Right.
People feel cheated when they go out to exercise their right to vote, and then they feel that somebody else is the beneficiary. So equity is not when you're talking about government, it's about also how we run our own activities.
Okay.
So I think this will offer us the opportunity to now sit back and really reflect. You've asked me the questions. Are these not things we've seen before? Why haven't we acted on them? Sometimes there is a point at which now you run out of batteries and then you have to stop. And this is that point, I think, for ODM. It is good that I think it is almost midway to the next elections. I would like to see how we manage, for example, if the referendum is coming. If we will have learned how to do that, let's start with seeing how we manage the referendum and how we plan for the subsequent nominations and the elections that is coming. But it's a good thing, in my view. Maybe if the double loss did not happen, perhaps even the report that is there will probably gather dust, and come 2022, or you'll be asking, aren't these things you've known for a while?
So it's a wake-up call.
It's a wake-up call, yeah.
How is ODM perceived? You want to comment?
No, probably what I have wanted to see really smoothly is had ODM just continued, in the direction that they were with when they were in NASA, probably would have seen a different, outcome. But, and probably in our politics, that's what we would need. I've always prayed for us to get to a point where this country will have 2 or maybe 3, but 2 is actually a very good number. 2 great, big political parties that are based on ideology, and all the virtues that go with making a formidable political party. I wish that was the case. You see, when Honorable talks about, even sibling rivalry, I mean, which, if assume any other seat was to fall vacant, God forbid, that is, that has an ODM candidate, would Wiper really support them in that bid? I doubt. And you see, because that just tells you they were not there with them in a place like, Embakasi. And these are some of the few things when you are in one big coalition. I think these are some of the things that can be ironed out. So it is actually very important for ODM to sit down and really go back to the drawing boards. I like that the fact that they say that, but also something which is quite more important as well, is the messaging. I think the messaging must be right this time round. And it's not only within ODM, but I think in all other parties, where for long we had thought that when somebody gets a nomination ticket, that, equally means that they've already gotten that seat. No, substance in politics, in our politics, must become the order of the day. Because really, that's how we've ended up with some of the craziest leaders that are running our politics today seriously. It's because they believed once they get a nomination certificate, that's all they need to do. So what they do is that they work to ensure that the structures that are within the nomination, at the nomination level or any level, are actually so not in tune with the higher echelons of the party that, because here, when you're talking about the party nominations, this is a situation whereby you can play around with, and you're able to bring in somebody which, may not be actually liked by the people, but once they get that certificate, there will be, it will be a hooray moment for them. But really, you've done that party a major disservice by putting somebody who is not actually liked or has substance for a particular locale. So I think as we move along, I know for sure, you can see by just these 2 seats, our politics, and I like to believe this, our politics is maturing. Not only do you need or deserve to get somebody who is in tune with the people, but also your messaging has to be right. It cannot be just coming to chastise someone who has got nothing to do with it. Because when I look at it, I started asking myself, where did Sifuna, and I really respect Sifuna, where did he start getting, his ideas to put DP into a place where he did not even, he was not supposed to be there in the first place? Would it have really mattered more for Sifuna to build a campaign machinery that would talk about alleviating some of the things that the Mwananchi machinery was going through? Would that have actually changed how the outcome we saw came out? I honestly believe, and I think Honorable Anthony would actually be a witness with me, that probably the messaging would have given us a different result.
I also wanted to weigh in again on this. I had in a separate forum theories. I mean, they're all manner of theories, and you can never really tell which is which. Former Governor Kabogo was trying to say that, especially Embakasi, this could have been a protest vote. That's his theory. According to him, I think he seems to be gravitating about Handshake is a fraud. And he seems to have been suggesting that this was a protest against the handshake. People are really telling Uhuru, because really the people who swung the vote in Embakasi South were the Jubilee-leaning demographic, which didn't have a candidate, so to speak. So if that bloc voted on this side, and the presumption should have been the handshake is, you know, Uhuru and Raila. So the automatic way to swing that vote, I'm just thinking, would have been for them to vote to show they support the handshake. So if they didn't do that, Kabogo's theory was that they are protesting, telling Uhuru, we don't like what you're doing. I don't know, it's just a theory. And thinking around that, another question has been posed. We support the handshake because Uhuru has said he will fight on a certain platform. Again, the question has been posed, how long do we stay in the handshake if those things aren't working? And especially if some people whom we consider to be people who should support the handshake seem to be holding back, and the reason we are sticking our necks in there is not really coming out on the corruption issue. I had Oburu to be asking, how long will we stick in there? Then the last point I wanted to make would be, and this is just politics 101. Did Jubilee set us up? Did they give us a poison chalice by saying we withdraw, knowing that things would go haywire? Did they really withdraw? Did they set us up and give us a poison chalice, knowing these guys will screw themselves up with this thing? I'm just thinking, politics 101.
That's a very good question.
Some political conspiractors could easily have said, look, let's appear to be doing this in the name of supporting handshake. But really, maybe it was a spin.
Right, you never know. Let me just ask a quick question. At this point, I know we need to look forward, but is it fair to describe ODM's party as, say, disorganized, confused, misguided at this point?
No. I think we let's put it at this. We didn't have a coherent messaging. We missed out what people wanted to hear or people wanted to do.
But aren't these the obvious things that need to be put right before going into a by-election? How could you miss out on the messaging, and how could you miss out on knowing what the people want?
There was a messaging, only that it was the wrong message.
But the point is, you need to get the messaging right.
You see, by the, I agree 100% with what Honorable is saying. The messaging was wrong because it became about a personality, not about the substance.
What was the excuse for wrong messaging?
You know, I think, first of all, most of the time when you come to politics is the excitement. Because the issue, actually the issue between dividing the handshakers and the non-handshakers started and originated in ODM by one, are
you going to blame the SG?
It's the SG, actually. I'm not blaming him. He's the one who came with it. SG is the person who brought Deputy William Ruto into that saga. All right, so the messaging was very wrong, and people sat down and asked, hang on a minute, what is the deputy president doing in this issue? All right, and when you're bringing him in, you know, you're bringing in a handshake, which to me was a great thing. You know, I mean, the prevalence of peace, we can't take it for granted. You know, anything else would have brought us back to where we were in 2018. So I think the messaging was so totally off. You know. And I mean, if it was in Embakasi alone and Ugenya turned different, probably then would have said, you know. But in both places, he went with the very same message, which was actually not auguring well with the people, and the people actually returned that message. You know, to me, it was a revolt. They said, you know what, we do not understand or we do not like your brand of politics. And I think that is where ODM needs to start. They may not be in a disarray at this point, because one thing I'm liking is the fact that they said we are going back to the drawing boards, which is good. And I'm praying, actually, honestly, politically, I want these guys to build a very formidable party that can actually be able to have a serious, front with any other party or coalition, because that's how we are going to build this this country.
I think for me, one, there was a message, only that we totally lost direction on how to capture that message. And I think the take home now, as I think through it, is to not have a one fixed fit message that this is the way we must do all our messaging for all elections. I think messaging must be election specific. It also, the message you will take to Wajir, for example, must specifically address the concerns of northeastern people.
I agree.
Exactly.
At the particular situation where we have now, you must go and do your research and perhaps completely not talk anything national. And just go and talk, what are the clan issues here?
I agree.
What are the historical issues that they have?
Yes.
The messaging must be specific to that. And not to say that the nationalistic discussions or national issues on corruption, it has served us before.
Yes.
It has served us before. But I think when you have a general elections, you can bring all those issues and make them resonate, because at that particular time, the political formation and the euphoria is usually Jubilee versus so-and-so, people who support corruption and not support corruption. There is usually a general trend and something that is resonating nationally at that particular time, and you can run with it during a general election. But I think during by-elections, the lesson here, number two, is that you probably need to desegregate by-elections to specific concerns and circumstances of a particular constituency. But I'll give you another example where it worked the opposite. In the by-elections we had in 2014, 2015 in Mathare.
Yes.
Remember at that particular time, Kenyans were reeling from what people thought was a stolen election from Raila by the Jubilee side. So the messaging at that particular time, and which worked to galvanize the people of Mathare, was that this election was not about the candidates. But you see, in Ugenya and Embakasi, it has worked differently. So maybe we thought cut and paste would work. In Mathare at that particular time, just right after the last election, the issue was, this is not about you. And that's why, for example, in the by-election, I wanted us to go for a party nominations before.
Yes.
And I was told to stand down. Why?
Correct.
That would have distracted or taken away the focus from the national issue, which was the Uhuru Raila issue and the stolen election. So we galvanized our people and our stronghold and all our forces, and at that particular time it worked. The problem is, what worked in the last by-election in another one will not work this time. So we need to think through selectively.
Okay, and let me ask, obviously now the two regions, that is Ugenya and Embakasi South, have new leaders from different parties. How does this now change the political landscape?
You see, by the way, in such a scenario, they may actually go like that until 2022. And this is the dynamic about by-elections and general elections. Remember, by-elections, really, that's why I'm saying by-elections, the message has to be very crisp. First of all, you won't have the euphoria that comes with the general election.
And the
Secondly,
turnout will be very
exactly,
low.
the turnout will be very low. So your message has to actually get home, failure to which you're drowned. So if somebody like David Ochieng would go with the same momentum that he has started, I can guarantee you 100%. Come 2022, he'll be in ODM. Reason being, ODM, if they learn, they will know this is a man who you need to be in good books with, because the people have chosen him primarily because of what he's able to deliver. Same thing may happen with Mawathe. Would it be or get to a point where they say, you know what, instead of fielding an ODM candidate, can we not support our Wiper candidate? And I really hope they would do that this time round, because that would have shown, you know what, we are within the same party, because Kalonzo right now is really so happy about this. But does that give, I mean, how will it change politics? Would somebody like Kalonzo be given some element of, thought where he thinks, I can take over ODM in Nairobi? Would you plant those seeds in him? And he says, any place that we are not going to do, in fact, he may say, I will not believe in joint nominations again. Those are things, we've seen such things. Many places, not even in Central, where people are like, you know what, we are in this party, but we will still field candidates. Is that something we may see in these areas, like primarily in Nairobi? Bet you it may happen. So it's going to play quite a big role when we are heading into 2022, mainly when it comes to doing joint nominations.
One more thing that he's brought up, which I want us to amplify a bit, is that a moment like this calls for a bit of climbing down. And like you mentioned, it's time for ODMs to start taking stock. How many people did we lose across the country because of either bad election, and not be vindictive against them and woo them back? That's what politics and people who run political parties do.
Totally.
Let's get those candidates, people who were our people, who went away. I know of about 3, 4, up to 6 in Western Province, seats that could have been ODM. But because either a decision was already made by Governor X that, you know, I get the ticket, and that's another thing. Governors get direct tickets, and then they say that we support the party, so leave the issue of who becomes MP and MCA. That's another mess, which I hope is in that report. Can we start looking for these people and bring them back? They didn't leave ODM because they wanted to. They didn't leave ODM because they don't believe in ODM and the party leader. So this conversation must begin as we reflect on this, not just for Ugenya and Embakasi. We must start looking for the David Ochiengs we lost. We must go to coast and look for some of the people who are drifting away because of, quote unquote, what they think is intolerance and little space democratically. I don't agree necessarily, but that's what they say. Let's look for them. Instead of hitting back at them and throwing barbs at them, I spoke to a Kisii MP, a young Kisii MP who is gravitating towards the DP. And he told me this: in a place like Kisii, where you never really know, it could swing either way. We could support your formation or still support the other side. It doesn't help to be antagonistic and throw barbs at us. He says some comments about when he was seen in a helicopter with the VP and somebody showed him a picture of his candidate and said, of his opponent. You know, the suggestion being, to Nadawa yako, we are waiting for you. And he was like, look, in a place like this, where you know we could go either way, you could go soft on us and try and tell us why we should come back this way. So this is, among other things, that ODM, I think, should take stock and try to do.
And one point that was raised was the fact that Raila Odinga kept away from the campaign trail. And do you think, Gabriel, that this did have a big impact on the outcome? And if it did, what does this say about ODM without Raila?
Well, it could have, but there's something that, Honorable Anton has also said. How can you build a party so strong that the party leaders don't need to show up for things to go right? You know, yes, I know the Raila actually made just a very small stint. You know, I think he was coming from somewhere and he made a stint passing by Embakasi South. And probably he may have been required to go there many times, but he didn't do it. But still, then you bring out the issue, when will these other people learn how to manage party politics? And probably that's what Honorable Raila is saying. You guys, you know, I'm becoming of age. I need to be dealing with more other things that are, you know, that are national. You need to know how to handle, you know, party primaries. You need to know how to handle a by-election. You know, I've seen there are several by-elections that have happened, you know, ODM that he never came, or he just came once, like in Mathare. He never came so many times. You know, he appeared just once. And, you know, that's it was, you know, the message was good. The message was clear. I think really, I wouldn't read too much into it for him not showing up. What I would read a lot into is what we've continued saying. Was the messaging right? Was it done well? Could it have been, you know, played differently? And the answer is it could have. So I think when ODM goes back to the drawing board, they have to go with the mindset that Wanjiku is becoming knowledgeable by the day. The issue of where you personalize everything and bring people who are not even there in the first place, where you come in and bring divisive politics of, if you are not with us, then you're with the other guy. No, I may not be with you, but I'm also not with the other person. So where do you leave me? But if you're going to categorize me that this is where I belong, then I have to revolt. And my revolt will mean that I go to the place where you don't want me. So I think the messaging was way, way broken. And, you know, it also goes to ask, was Sumra the right person?
Okay.
You know, I mean, those are some of the things that we need to be talking about.
I agree.
And just to clarify, sorry, Anthony, we need to release you shortly?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you are able to give your final remarks, and then we'll cross over to my colleague. Yes, and then we'll cross over to my colleague.
And I want to pick up from his last point.
Go ahead.
Is the practice of giving direct nominations.
Yes.
Is something we need to revisit. I know it is something that the party has opened up to. Our regulations, Article 18 allows us to give direct nomination. But I think we will have to be able to review. Is it automatic, for example, that if I went to court and won a petition, I may eventually have completely distanced myself from the ground and drifted away from being in touch? Am I the automatic beneficiary of that ticket? I think that's a starting point before even we get to messaging. We must bring that person on board and do some audit and ask how close, how well off, how properly grounded is this person to be able to be our flag bearer, irrespective of the fact that he's the one who's won the election. If we reach the decision that in spite of you having been the one who won the petition, we are going to lose, a decision must then be reached. Should we go for another candidate? Should we go for another nomination? That's something that we really have to. So the last thing as I wound up was the issue as to what happens to the party minus Raila. That's an honest, sober conversation that must be given. And sometimes, like they say in South Africa, give us a signal. And I think that's the vibe and the attitude that the rank and file have. You know, the kind of respect that you do not start thinking of inheriting your father's wife or homestead where he's still alive. And as far as I'm concerned, Raila will still be a candidate in 2022. Right now, he doesn't want to talk politics. But the question, and if I was to paraphrase the late Monroe, when he said, what happens when you're not there? That's your legacy. That's what he said. If you listen to that speech, it tells you that you must plan your exit. And we're not saying he's not good. Raila is going to be there. But maybe by staying away from the by-election, he was asking in a different way the question that Jesus asked Peter. He was preparing Peter to take over. And this is what he asked Peter 3 times. Do you love me? Take care of my flock. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. He gave a very direct question. Maybe Raila, unlike Jesus, is not going to ask Mbadi or Sifuna or Nyong or whoever that get ready to start having a machine outside of me. I'm too busy doing infrastructure things in Africa. Can you manage without me? So maybe he let this off to send a message to them. Take care of my flock. I want to see how you can do it. Maybe, unfortunately, nobody stepped up to do it.
And perhaps left him disappointed. But as you say, the work will now begin to make it right. All right, Anthony, thanks very much for your contribution. Gabriel, you're still with us, and much appreciated.
Thank you.
And we'll no doubt pick up on these issues after we cross over now to the guest. Gabriel Mutuma stays with us in this conversation about the Ugenya and Embakasi South by-elections. What do you really think the way forward for ODM would be?
You see, like Anthony has said, before he left, he talked about, what Raila may be actually envisioning. And to me, I agree with him 100%. It will come a time where now the young, people in ODM must actually take up the mantle and lead the party into greater heights. I still keep insisting, Smriti, if we get to a point where ODM, and let me say NASA, if they are able to build a big coalition or just a party that has a national outlook, the way they did with NASA, one party that can be able to put checks and balances in any administration, whether they're in government or not, one that be able to check on things that are affecting the common mwananchi, then that's where this country should be going in matters democracy and our party politics. But the way things are right now, that's not where we are headed. Hopefully, as we move along to 2022, and if, going with what Anthony is telling us, that Raila will be running for president, then it would mean he'll have quite a lot on his plate. you know, he has to leave other people to be able to run party matters, whether that is nominations, whether that is, you know, the lower cadre of political seats. You know, he has always done, he has always seemed to be doing almost everything. His hand has always been everywhere. Coming to the issue of direct nominations, I think that must come to an end, not only for ODM, but for any other political party, because that would mean, when you're giving somebody a direct nomination, it would mean that, you know, he's being actually accepted by the people, and rarely do people do that.
And I suppose it also denies the people the opportunity to select who they want.
You see, that's why democracy thrives on elections.
Right.
You're given, every 5 years, you're given a chance to look at the scorecard of the person you elected and say, am I going to give him another tenure, or am I going to put somebody else who I believe will do better than this other, you know, person in office? You know, look at the, you know, someone like a seat like, you know, in the Senate seat, ODM in Nairobi. Would it have gone, you know, the way it had they not brought somebody else who had lost another nomination? Would they have chosen somebody else rather than, you know, give Kidero a ticket to continue? And probably, yes, that seemed okay at that particular time, but would it have changed things if they said, hang on a minute, the Mwananchi is complaining that Nairobi has not been run the way they wanted for the past 5 years. What do we do as a party? Do we need to have a conversation as how to move forward? Probably would have produced different results. But, you know, that's politics.
Yeah.
That's politics. Now they would argue different. But one thing I'm liking is the fact that, and I keep insisting that they're going to the drawing boards is not a bad thing. Yeah. I think they've taken a really, really, really big hit on Embakasi South and Ugenya. If, you know, these are areas where you thought, you know, they would win the campaigns that they put. But also then again, the candidates, you must ask, were these the right people? Yeah. Because when a candidate talks volumes by somebody who you present. Remember, you're talking about a by-election. This is not a general election. Yeah. So things are very different at that particular time. So would it have meant bringing somebody who has an element of sobriety to a place like, you know, Embakasi South, and, you know, ensuring, you know, Sumra gets to take, you know, a seat for now, probably, you know, when there's the euphoria of a national election, probably he can come in and win it. Yeah. But I think the messaging and how he was talking also did not augur well with the people. The language, by the way, that he used was quite offensive. And, you know, the other one, you know, they actually punctured themselves by bringing somebody like Dr. William Ruto into it, into a campaign where he was not supposed to be in the first place. In fact, they gave him the glory without knowing.
They did.
And politics, that in politics, oh, that's kudos,
it's a good
man.
thing.
Oh, they will ride on it until the wheels fall off. If I was William Ruto, I would do the same.
Well, William Ruto's allies have said that these results are a, quote, rehearsal of the presidential bid or warm-up to 2022. Yes. What are your comments on that?
Do you know where? Let me for once agree on that particular message. May not be real, but if I would to analyze it a little bit further, I would say they are making it appear that you do not have to dry me dirty, or you don't have to put me out there dirty. Right. For people to vote for you. What matters is the substance. By you saying, oh, if you're the corrupt, he's the most corrupt, people may not buy that. You know? Just the other day, the president told us that the corrupt cases will not be tried through the media or using vigilante mechanisms. There are officers mandated by law and the Constitution to deal with those things. So when you personalize it, not only do you degrade the substance of that particular seat, but you are trying to say we are cleaner than them. Right. And probably that's what is not auguring well with the Mwananchi. So for Ruto supporters, they are seeing it as a win because you put us here in the first place. Yeah. You said it was you versus us.
Right.
Now the seat has come our way. Why should we not take the glory? And they say, if you continue with that messaging, come 2022, people will do the very same thing that they've done. So it is the high time people ask themselves, why did we lose? And if ODM is going to be honest with themselves, this is a conversation that they need to have, and have it openly and not openly also, and also have it very honestly with themselves, and ask, is this the bashing of this person, when we know for sure the DCI, the DPP, the EACC, and the new IG of police can do their work? What is our work to Wanjiku? What are we supposed to be doing to ensure that this country moves or gets to where it's supposed to go? Is this issue of demonizing somebody, is it going to get us the votes that we need? And by the way, if you see the message in 2017, the message that Jubilee took to the people and the message that NASA took to the people was again actually is the same messaging that they've taken to Ugenya and Embakasi South. By the way, you have those tips. Break them down and see. Jubilee took the message to the people of development. We are doing.
Of progress, and this is what we can expect.
We are doing, we have done. They took a very different message. They took the message of Wakora, they took the message of thieves, they took the message, and people did not buy that. So I think from where I'm seated, things must start making sense to Wanjiku. And those things that make sense is the matters and development that will change the livelihood, the things that will talk about probably healthcare to Wanjiku, tell them about education, tell them about how the economies are not, doing well with them. Tell them the high cost of living, things like those.
My question comes up as to why they haven't realized this already. Why hasn't the other party, ODM or NASA, why is it taking them so long to realize what the right messaging ought to be?
You see, the other thing about politics, and this is the core thing I hate about politics, it creates false excitement. It is very easy for you to think you're winning while actually you're losing. And this is where now, when you're hit by the raw fact on the ground, people get disoriented because you thought all along these people are with me. Come to know they were not buying what you were selling. So the question that you ask, I would also like to pose the very same question. Why are you guys not getting this message? Why every time must you derail yourselves back to issues to deal with personalities? Why can you rise, and talk about the issues that are affecting the common man? If it's the war against corruption, we have houses like Parliament where we can deal with it decisively, both in Parliament and the Senate. We have mechanisms. We know how this war can be won. If honestly we personalize it, I don't believe we will get anywhere. There are governors today who've spent time in jail and in remand. There are governors today who are going to the corridors of justice. There are MPs, who've actually been mentioned. There are CSs today. All right? So that is the war which we should be fighting. We ensure that these people don't continue treating courts like their backyards, but something meaningful is going to come out of it by people starting to spend serious jail terms. If we do not personalize this war and actually engage the institutions that are mandated by law, asking them when, how, expedite, things like those, will be going somewhere. But personalizing it, that message is not going home.
As we've seen. All right, well, we're out of time, but as always, thanks so much for your insights on this particular topic. Much appreciated.
Anytime, thank you.
All right, well, with me in studio, Gabriel Muthuma, a political analyst. We have been breaking down the reasons behind the double loss by ODM in the Ugenya and also Embakasi South by-election that took place this weekend. Well, that's where we leave it on NTV Today. Thanks very much for your company. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi. More news coming your way at 1 o'clock. I'll see you